video, we will be learning about the usage of parameters in CDS views. Now, in order to understand what are parameters in the context of CDS views, let's look at something that most of us are probably already very familiar with, and that is the good old function module in ABAP. So I am in the function builder transaction SE37. I have here a function module called ABAP underscore PO underscore create. And as the name suggests, this function module is used to create purchase orders. Let's display it. And then let's go to the tab import. Now here we can see there are a number of so-called parameters that have been defined. These are the importing parameters. Now what do these importing parameters do? This function module that we see here is most probably going to be called in a report program or in a class or somewhere else. And these importing parameters allow the calling application to pass some data into the function module. Okay, and then the function module can make use of the data for its further data processing as part of the overall business logic. Okay, so these importing parameters serve as an interface between the calling application and the function module itself, right? The term parameters also comes into play when we talk about class methods or form routines as well. In a very similar fashion, CDS views can also define importing parameters. And these importing parameters then allow a calling application to pass some data into the CDS view, and then the CDS view makes use of this data for its data modeling activities. So in a nutshell, importing parameters are the input values that a calling application provides to a CDS view, and then the CDS view makes use of this for its data modeling activities. So normally when we define a CDS view entity, the syntax that we use, we start off with the keywords define view entity, followed by the view entity name, and then we write as select from, followed by the data source that we are going to select the data out of. And then within curly brackets, we specify the fields that are going to form part of my view output. So this is the usual way we set up a view entity. This is how we have been seeing in the previous videos as well. Now, if I were to enhance this and if I were to include some parameters within this view definition, this is how I would go about it. So define view entity, the keywords remain the same, followed by the view entity name. And then the next thing we do is we write the keywords with parameters, and then the name of the first parameter followed by a colon, and then the parameter type. This is going to be followed by a comma, and then the next parameter followed by a colon, and then the parameter type for the second parameter. And this process would of course be repeated for as many times as the number of parameters that we would like to define. It's going to be a comma separated list of parameters. And once we are through with the parameter definition, we continue with the as select from keyword, followed by the data source, and then within curly brackets, the fields of the view output, just like in the earlier example where we defined the CDS view without parameters. Okay, so as you can see, the two syntaxes, the difference being on the right hand side, we have a parameter list. The next thing to talk about is the parameter type. Now, every parameter that we define as part of the CDS view will, of course, have a parameter type. And in order to specify the parameter type, we have two choices. We can either use a predefined data element, like for example, here I define a parameter and I've specified the type of it as bukrs underscore d. This is a predefined data element that's already available in the system. Or I could use a standard predefined standard type to specify the parameter type. Like for example, in this case, I have a parameter defined p underscore cutoff date, and its type is abap.dats. This is a predefined standard type. and the names of parameters should begin with P underscore. So there's one last thing that we should know about the syntax before we jump into the coding part, and that is once you have defined the parameter in the parameter list at the top of the view definition, how do you go about accessing this parameter within the view definition? And the syntax to do that is like this. We specify the dollar symbol, so dollar parameters dot followed by the parameter name. So wherever you want to use this parameter in an expression or as part of the view output, you specify dollar parameters dot followed by the name of the parameter that you defined at the top over here. Okay, so that's enough for the theory part now, and let's jump into Eclipse to build a few parameters in CDS views. So I have here a CDS view definition, and as you can see, we have the statements define view entity. This is the name of the CDS view entity. It does a select on VBAK, and there is an association with the cardinality 1:n to the item table, and this is the relationship between the two tables. We have already gone ahead and added in a few fields from my VBAK table, and there is an amount and currency field a combination over here. They are linked using this reference relationship, and I have also exposed the association to the item table using the name underscore item over here. So this is our starting point. And the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to first define the parameter list. And in the earlier slide, we had seen the place to start off. This is right after the name of the view entity. So over here, let's make some space. And we start off with the keyword with parameters, all right? And then we go ahead and specify the parameters one by one. So the first parameter that I'm going to include is a date field called p underscore key date. Names of parameters begin with p underscore, followed by the colon symbol, and then the parameter type. And for this parameter, I'm going to use an already existing data element called syst underscore datum, all right? And this is followed by a comma since there's going to be more than one parameter. And my second parameter is going to be called p underscore rebate. And this is going to be an integer field. So it's going to have a number, a percentage value. So like 10%, 20%. And for this, I'll use an already existing data type called ABAP dot int2. Yes, this should be right. And then finally, the third parameter, which is a currency field, which is going to be called as p underscore target underscore currency, colon symbol, and then the type, again, a standard type here. So this is how we have set up a parameter list over here. So using the keywords with parameters followed by the parameter list. This is a comma separated list. And in each of the parameters, we have a parameter name followed by the parameter type. Parameter type can be either data element or a standard type. So the first use case that we're going to see is one in which the parameters are made part of your where condition in a CDS view definition. So let's go ahead and define a where condition here. And the case that I'm looking for, I only want to see sales orders in which the document date is greater than this particular key date, right? So the field for the document date is this one, AUDAT, and I only want to see sales orders where this document date is greater than the key date. So the way to specify that is we say where vbak.audat, that's the name of the field, is greater than, and we had also seen the syntax for accessing a parameter within the view definition. So we say dollar $parameters dot and then the name of the parameter. All right. So this is how you specify a parameter as part of your where condition. All right. This is the first use case. So let's just go ahead and write it out over here as a comment so that we know case 1. Now the next use case that we are going to see is where we'll make use of parameters as part of expressions. Now within the CDS view definition, most probably we would have made use of some arithmetic expression. Yeah, so when I say arithmetic expression, I mean some cast statement or maybe a case statement or some mathematical operation, or we may even have made use of some function calls. And usually within these expressions, we make use of the view fields. And just like you use view fields, you can also use parameters within these expressions. And we're going to see an example of that now. So let's say I want to set up a new field called as the rebate amount. This particular field is the net order item value. And I want to offer a certain percentage of the net order item value as a rebate, as a discount. And that percentage is provided to the CDS view by the calling application through this particular parameter. So P underscore rebate. So let's say the rebate percentage is 5% and the net order item value is 100 euros. The rebate amount would be calculated as 5% of 100, which is then 5 euros. All right, so let's set up this field over here. We say vbak.netwr into, so the net order item value into the rebate percentage. The rebate percentage is a parameter. So we use the syntax $parameters and then the name of the parameter, which is rebate. And since this is a percentage value, we divide it by 100. And then we specify an alias. Now we still see there is a syntax error over here. The message says data type currency is not supported. This is because the net order item value is of type is an amount field, and this is of type decimal. And when you're trying to multiply these two, there would be a type conflict. So what we're going to do is we are going to cast the net amount field pbak.netwr into a decimal. So we say cast as abap.dec 20 of length 20 with 2 decimal places. Okay, so what we have done over here is we have cast the net amount field into decimal using this part, and then that value we have multiplied with the rebate percentage divided by 100 to get the rebate amount. Okay, so this is how you can make use of a parameter as part of an arithmetic expression. So let's comment it out. The next use case that we are going to see is where we will make use of the parameters in a function call. So we have a standard function called as the currency conversion. This function allows us to convert an amount field from one source currency into a target currency. It has a few parameters which we are now going to specify. The first parameter is going to be the amount field. And in this case, the amount that I want to convert is the vbak.netwr. The next parameter is the source currency, which is going to be the currency for the net netwr amount, which is WAERK. Then we have the target currency. Let's not forget the comma. And my target currency is what the calling application is going to send to the CDS view through this particular importing parameter. So let's specify that here. The next parameter that has to be passed is the exchange rate date. And for the exchange rate date, again, this is something that is going to be passed into the CDS view through this particular importing parameter. So we say exchange rate is parameters dot, and then finally we have the exchange rate type, and the value for that is going to be M. And this particular function call, this ends the function call here, this returns a value, and that is then going to be the column. We specify an alias for this, net amount in target currency. Okay, I think let's get rid of this. We can also simply print the value of the parameters as a field in the view output. This means I have here the parameter p underscore target underscore currency. I'll simply make it part of the view output by specifying the name here and then giving it an alias. So this parameter then becomes part of the view output just like the other view fields. Now there is still an syntax error here in this function call, and this is because the currency conversion returns us an amount field, and as we know, an amount field has to be linked to a reference currency field. And the way to do that is by using the annotation. This is the annotation that I need to use. So the reference currency field for this amount is going to be this particular target CURR. So let's specify that here. And then that should then resolve this particular syntax error. So this was our third use case in which we have made use of a parameter in a function call. So let's comment it out here. Okay, so this is probably a good time to have a look at our output now. So when we try to test out the CDS view, so we press F8, we get this kind of a pop-up, and this pop-up expects us to then enter the parameter values as they would have been passed by the calling application. All right, so here you see the three importing parameters that we had defined as part of the view definition. So let's go ahead and type in the value of these parameters. Let's put in the key date and the rebate percentage. Let's take 10%, and the target currency would be EUR, so euros. And then we click on Open Data Preview. So this is the output that we get. Of course, in the beginning, we had specified a few fields from the header table, from the parent table of the association. And then we had the net amount field in document currency and then the document currency itself. And then the rebate amount is calculated as 10% of the net amount field, all right? And this 10% came in through the importing parameter. This is something that the calling application would have sent at runtime. And then of course we had the currency conversion function call in which we converted the net amount field into the target currency, which in our case was EUR. All right. So this is how you can make use of parameters as part of your data modeling activities in different scenarios. There's one more use case that we would like to talk about. Now, in ABAP, we know that there are something called as session variables. All right, so there are system-defined variables that can be used for retrieving commonly used information. So for example, things like system date or system username, system time, system logon language, etc. And we have over here a date field. And the CDS view expects the calling application to mandatorily pass in this particular key date field. Now let's say I want to default this particular key date to the system date field, which means that if the user has passed a date, then use it. And if not, then default it to the system date and use that particular system date. So there's a way that this can be achieved with the help of annotations. So I'm going to annotate this particular importing parameter using the environment.system field annotation. So the way to do that, we say at environment.system field. All right. So we are basically telling the system that the p underscore key date is going to be a system field, and the value of the annotation, you can use code completion here, and we see over here the different possibilities that we can have. And the one that we are interested in is of course the system date. All right. So what this would do is that if this particular importing parameter is not passed by the system, it's going to be defaulted to the system date. So let's save and activate this. And there's something interesting that we should probably see. So let's go to the data preview again. This time you see these two parameters, p underscore rebate and p target currency, have been marked, are still marked as mandatory. That's why you see the star asterisk sign next to it. P underscore key date, however, is no longer mandatory, because if it's not set, the system will just set it to the current date and use it in the view definition. All right. Finally, let's look at an example of how these parameters can be sent by the calling application into the CDS view. So this is, I have here opened a test report, and there are two things that we're going to see here, right? So first is, if I were to do a select on a CDS view that does not have parameters, how does the select statement look like? So this would be like a select on any other database table. So we just say select star from the data source, which is in this case um, the the view that we just defined, and then of course the target where we want to store the data records. This is how a normal select on a CDS view looks like. But of course, this particular CDS view expects importing parameters, and so therefore, um, in fact, even if you try to save and activate this like this, it would give you an error telling us that this particular CDS view expects importing parameters. So it says us that the parameter p underscore rebate was not bound. So let's try correcting this. So let's comment this out and write the correct select statement by passing the parameters this time. So we say select from data source, and then we open parenthesis, then type in the first parameter p underscore key date, set its value. Now I'm just hard coding it. Of course, in real life practice, you would probably have a selection screen here where you would take this in, or you would have some other logic for determining it. For now, let's just hard code it in just to see how the parameters get passed from the calling application into the CDS view, comma, and the next parameter would be p underscore rebate, which has a value of 10 numeric, and then the target currency. And then of course we specify the target, which would be the internal table. We escape it, of course, like this. So this is how the calling application would pass parameters into the CDS view. Okay, so that's it for now. I hope the topic of parameters in CDS views is now clear to you. They work just like importing parameters in function modules or in class methods. And there are a number of use cases where you can incorporate parameters within your data modeling. I would encourage you to go ahead and try out a few of these use cases in your system before you proceed on to the next video in this series. In the next video, we will be looking at how to handle texts within CDS views. So until then, keep coding and goodbye.